Right. Right. Hope you are able to see my screen, and you can have a look here. This particular session is all about, like, we are going to learn DevOps tools along with the AWS cloud. This particular course covers about all the DevOps tools along with the AWS cloud. So we'll understand, like, what are the DevOps tools that we are going to learn, and in the AWS cloud also, what are all the services that we will be learning. We will be understanding. We will be going forward, and we will see what are the services and what are the DevOps tools that we are going to learn. Before that, let's understand what is actually a DevOps. What is the need of learning these DevOps tools and all. Okay, let's go ahead and understand what is actually a DevOps and what is the need of learning these DevOps tools. So, what is this DevOps? See, we can observe very clearly, DevOps is not a single word. Actually, DevOps is a combination of two words. If we can observe very clearly, DevOps is a combination of two words. So, like, we can see two words here. One is development and the other one is operations. Development and operations. There are two words here. One is dev, other one is ops. Development and operations. So usually DevOps is mainly for okay. DevOps is a combination of two words. One is development and the other one is operations. So we will understand what is actually the meaning of DevOps and all. Okay, we'll try to understand what is actually the meaning of DevOps. So earlier, so if we want to understand the meaning of this DevOps, definitely we should have a basic idea about the waterfall model. You know about, right? You know about some development models, like we have waterfall model, we have agile model, like that. We have various kinds of software development life cycles. So definitely, if we want to understand the meaning of DevOps, okay, if we want to understand the meaning of DevOps, definitely we should understand the meaning of this waterfall model, agile model, all these things. So let's go for a brief introduction about these things, and then we will come back and we will understand the meaning of DevOps. So why we need to understand this waterfall model is, like, because earlier, like 10 years ago in the industry, like we used to follow this waterfall model. We used to follow this waterfall model earlier. So that's the reason why we need to understand how actually the approach was earlier, and now how the approach is today. Got it, right? So what I'm particularly saying is, if we want to understand the meaning of DevOps, definitely we should understand what is waterfall model and what is the agile model that we are using today. Today we are all following agile methodology. Okay, if you observe, today we are all following waterfall methodology. So then let's go ahead and understand what is this waterfall model. You see here, we all know, like, what is this waterfall model. All these models, waterfall model, agile model, all these models comes under software development lifecycle. So to start with a project, to develop any product, definitely usually companies will follow a software development lifecycle. We will follow an approach called SDLC, software development lifecycle. By the name itself, we can understand. So this is a life cycle we follow. This is the life cycle we follow, definitely for developing a product. So suppose if I want to develop any particular project, we should understand, we should have a software development life cycle. We should follow software development life cycle. Under software development life cycle, we have some models like waterfall model and agile model. Let's understand what are the steps that we have in the waterfall model. Okay, waterfall model, there are many models. So waterfall model is one which comes under software development life cycle. Similarly, agile model is also one of the models that comes under software development life cycle. So what is actually waterfall model usually? So if we want to understand this very clearly, okay, so let me tell you an example. Let me tell you an example to understand what is a waterfall model and all. Okay, so I'm just opening any of the application here. If you see here, I'm just opening an application of ICICI Bank or HDFC Net Banking. Any of the applications I'm just opening. Okay, so this is an application for ICICI. This is an ICICI Net Banking application. If you see, this is an ICICI Net Banking application. And we see here there are many modules. So we can, if I want to log in with personal banking, I'll just click on personal banking, and I will give my I'll give my login details, and I'll try to log in into this banking. Okay. Similar to the personal banking, we have NRA banking, business banking, corporate banking. We have many modules, right? So we have many modules here. Consider this is the one application. ICICI requires some net banking for their operations. Okay, ICICI Bank needs net banking for their operations. So try to understand, this ICICI Bank has approached some software company like Infosys or Wipro, whatever it is. So once after this ICICI Bank has approaching the software company like Infosys or Wipro, so now immediately what the IT company will ask to this ICICI? ICICI, the software company will ask this ICICI, like what is your requirement? You can try to understand, like I'm showing here in the PPT, like, so what is waterfall model? So in the waterfall model, we have various steps. Like the very first step is like before they start a project, the very first step is like they will go for collecting the requirements. After that, they'll go for analysis, design, coding, testing, acceptance, right? So now you consider one scenario. ICICI Bank needs one internet banking application. So ICICI Bank is a client now. It has approached some software company like Infosys or Wipro. Now, immediately, what will be the question what will be the discussion that will be taking place between the IT company and this client, right? That's what we are trying to understand. So if the very first thing is like, once they are going to develop a project, the very first thing that they will discuss is requirements. What is your requirement? How you need the application? Okay, Infosys will ask the ICICI Bank, like how you need the application. So Infosys will try to collect the requirements. Infosys will try to collect the requirements from ICICI Bank. So then ICICI Bank will they will start saying like, we need a net banking application like this. We need these many modules. We need personal banking. We need NRA banking. We need corporate banking, and we need to have maintain different accounts, like savings account, salary account, like that. So this is the model. This is how we need the net banking application. They will come up saying this is how we need net banking application. So based on that, they will collect the requirements. Who is going to collect the requirements in this scenario? Infosys team. Okay, let's try to understand. We are taking an example. Infosys team is trying to collect the requirements from who is the client here. So we must understand who is the client and who is the IT company. What is IT company here? You can understand, right? Infosys is the IT company. ICICI Bank is the client, right? So the very first phase is like requirements gathering. Even if you have an idea about waterfall model, you can see there are various phases in the waterfall model. Collecting the requirements. So the very first phase is Infosys will collect the requirements from ICICI. You understood, right? What are the requirements? So ICICI has to say the requirement. what actually, how actually they require the net banking application. They need personal banking module, they need an NRA module, they need business banking, like that. It will, okay, it will discuss, it will ask for the requirements. ICICI will ask for the requirements. What is the next phase? Once after the requirements are collected, what is the next phase? We can able to see here, right? What is the next phase? Analysis. So what do you mean by analysis phase? So usually the requirements and analysis is the single phase. So once after the requirements and analysis is done, so they'll go for requirements and analysis. After that, they'll go for the design phase. What do you mean by design phase here? They will start discussing about what is the technology that we can use. So what might be the front end, what might be the back end. So what are the technologies that we can use for designing the product? Okay, if they are going to start working on developing ICICI net banking application, so they will start analyzing what might be the designing requirements, like whether we can use Java, .NET, or what is the front end that we can use. Okay, all these things they will discuss. Okay, so deciding technology components. The design phase, they will decide the technology components. So once after deciding the technology components, so usually they will start the coding part. Who will work on the coding part? We all know, right? Developers will work on the coding part. So once the coding part is over, usually the next phase is testing. Once the coding is done, usually that code will be given to the testers. So to find out any bugs or issues, once the testing is done, then it will be accepted. So these are the stages that usually happens, right? Requirements and analysis, design, coding, testing, acceptance. These are the stages that actually we will see in any of the models. Not only in waterfall model, there are many models like Agile, other models also. We'll see similar kind of approach. But what I'm saying is we stopped using this waterfall model. Earlier, some 10, 15 years ago, we were using this waterfall model. Now we are not using this waterfall model. We stopped using this waterfall model. Why? Because there are some drawbacks in this model. There are some drawbacks in the model. We can see here, there are some drawbacks in the model. The biggest drawback is, I can explain you what is the biggest drawback in the waterfall model. So waterfall model is not a good model for the complex projects. So if we are developing a complex project, it is not suitable. Waterfall model is not suitable. Let me tell you what are the drawbacks present in the waterfall model. We have some drawbacks present in the waterfall model. Let me tell you what are the drawbacks present in the waterfall model. You see, what in the waterfall model, what actually the approach we follow is, so first they will start collecting requirements for all the modules at a time. You see here, they will collect before, once after the requirement discussion is done, they will try to collect the requirements for all the modules during requirements phase itself. So they will collect the requirements for personal banking, they'll collect the requirements for NRA, all the modules, whatever the modules that we have here, they will collect the requirements for all the modules at a time. So since they are collecting requirements for all the modules at a time, and it is very difficult to come back and to change the requirements once the development is started. You see here, what is happening in the waterfall model? Requirements are collecting in the beginning itself for all the modules. I'm not saying like about one module and all. They are collecting requirements for all the modules at a time. If there are some 10 modules, you understood, right? What is a module and all? I'm showing you some example here. Personal banking is one module. NRA banking is one module. Business is one module. Corporate is one module. So like that, there will be different modules. What happens in waterfall model? In waterfall model, they will collect the requirements for all the modules at a time. They'll collect the requirements for all the modules at a time. Sorry. So they'll collect the requirements for all the modules at a time. So what happens if they collect the requirements for all the modules at a time? So usually, if they want to make any changes in the requirements, if ICICI Bank comes back and asks, we need a small modification in the requirements, once after developing the product, then that will be very difficult to modify the requirements. So modifying the requirements or changing the requirements is not at all possible in the waterfall model. So we are not saying like it is not at all possible. It is very difficult. See, once after collecting all the requirements and all, once after collecting the requirements for all the modules, it is very difficult to go back and to modify the requirements. That is one problem. ఏంది మన ప్రాబ్లమ్ నేను చెప్తుంటే కూడా అర్థం చేసుకో నేను క్లాస్ లో ఉన్నానని కిందకి వెళ్ళచ్చు సారీ సారీ. So it is very difficult. We are talking about waterfall model, right? So there are some drawbacks in the waterfall model. The drawbacks in the waterfall model is like it is very difficult to come back and to modify the requirements. See, they are collecting the requirements in the beginning itself. If ICICI Bank comes tomorrow and if it asks for modifying the requirements, then it will be very difficult for them to modify the requirements. That's why one of the drawbacks in waterfall model is very difficult to modify the requirements. So this waterfall model is not at all suitable for the large projects or complex projects. Why? Because the large projects or complex projects will have many modules, right? They'll have many modules. So once after collecting the requirements and once they started working on the development, and if ICICI Bank comes with some requirements and all for modification, that will be very difficult to go back and modify. So one thing is changing requirements are not at all possible in the waterfall model. Try to understand, earlier we were using this waterfall model, but we are not using this at all for larger projects or for some complex projects because modifying the requirements is not at all possible. That is one thing that where we are not going for waterfall model today. And you see here, there is also like if we see this waterfall model, we will also waste like there is some you can see here. Okay, so this is the one, right? We are talking about. We have various phases like requirements, analysis, design, like that. We have various phases. Usually, different teams will be different teams will be working on it. So consider there is a team working on requirements gathering. Okay, I'm talking about one more drawback. Okay, we have many phases here: requirements, analysis, design, like that. So the problem here is usually different teams will be working on it. So we have a team for requirements gathering, we have a team for analysis, we have a team for design. Okay, there is a separate team working for coding, separate team working for testing. Okay, like that. Different teams will be there. Suppose if a team is working on requirements gathering and consider that team takes some 2 months or 3 months for collecting all the requirements, to understand all the requirements and analyzing. So for those 3 months, the remaining teams will be sitting ideally. You see here, we have many teams here. Teams who will be working on requirements, design part, coding part, testing part, different teams will be working on it. So suppose if a team is working on requirements gathering, and if it takes some 2 to 3 months of time or some 6 months of time, for this entire 6 months, the other teams, the other people, who might be working on design part, coding part, testing part, they'll be sitting ideally without having any work and all. So we can see here lots of time will get wasted here. Why? Because the requirements team will collect the requirements for all the modules. They will collect the requirements for all the modules, not for a single module. Okay. Requirements team will collect the requirements for all the modules. So like that's why if it takes some 6 months of time or some 1 year, for the entire 6 months or 1 year, so all the remaining teams will be sitting ideally without having any work. So we can see that some time is getting wasted. Okay, and we are also wasting some resources here. Okay, we are also wasting the resources. So that's the reason why that is one more drawback. First drawback is very difficult to modify the requirements. Okay, once after collecting the requirements, it is very difficult to modify again. And the second one is like lots of resources are being wasted. Why? Because so if the requirements phase takes some 1 year or 6 months of time, for the entire 6 months, the other teams will also be sitting. Other teams will also be sitting ideally. Okay, why they are sitting ideally? Once the requirements team, if they are done with the requirements, and if it was, then only the work will comes to the next teams like design team, coding team, and all. Okay, so once the task is done by once the work is done by the requirements team, then the design team will start working on design part. Once the design is done, then the coding team will work on the coding part. Once the coding is done, then the testing team will work on the testing part. Okay. So what is happening here? If the requirements team is taking some 6 months, for the entire 6 months, all the remaining teams will be sitting ideally. And next, if the design team takes some 3 months of time, so for this 3 months, also the remaining teams will be sitting ideally. Totally, for the requirements, it is 6 months, and for design, it is 3 months. 6 plus 3, for totally 9 months. Coding team, testing team, accept all these teams, all the remaining teams will be sitting ideal. Okay, so this is the problem here. So lots of time is getting wasted in the waterfall model. So the biggest problem is like modifying the requirements. Coming back and modifying the requirements is not a suitable thing. So that's the reason why we are not going for this waterfall model today for larger projects. These are the drawbacks we have, you can see here. So once an application is in the testing stage, it is very difficult to go back and modify the requirements. Okay, and it is not at all suitable. This waterfall model is not at all suitable for larger projects. Hope you understood the drawbacks present in the waterfall model. And now we need to understand we are overcoming the drawbacks present in the waterfall model in the agile one. Today we are using agile methodology. So in this agile methodology, we are overcoming the drawbacks. Okay, we are using this agile model to overcome the drawbacks present in the waterfall model. We understood the drawbacks, right? What are the drawbacks that are present in the waterfall model? So let's understand the drawbacks present in the waterfall model and how we are overcoming them in the agile model. Okay. So what are the drawbacks here we have seen in the waterfall model? In waterfall model, usually waterfall model is taking much time. Okay, for developing a product, it is taking more time. And one more thing is requirements. Modifying the requirements is not at all possible. So you can take an example for the waterfall model. If it takes some 2 years of time, so we can do the same product. We can develop the same product by using agile methodology in some 1 year. If we are taking some 2 years of time to develop a product using waterfall model, then we can develop the same product by using agile model within 1 year. So what is the strategy? How we are doing it? So we are doing it in incremental. We are doing it in incremental cycles. Try to understand. We are doing it in an incremental way. how we are doing it. I can show you the same application which we are talking about. You can see here what is the difference. Earlier in the waterfall model, they used to collect requirements for all the modules at a time. They used to collect requirements for all the modules at a time. But in the agile model, that will not happen. Okay, first they will start with only one module. They'll start with only one module, personal banking. They'll start with personal banking. Once it is done, they will go for the NRI banking. So, since they are following this methodology, since they are following this approach, module by module, first they will start with personal banking. Once the personal banking module is done, they'll go for NRI banking. Or otherwise, simultaneously. Okay, if one team is working on personal banking, the other team will work on NRI banking. The other teams will be working on some other modules, so that simultaneously also they will start working on. So that what happens here, lots of time we can save, and you can understand very easily. Since we are collecting the requirements only for one module and we are developing it, and then we are going to other module, right? We are collecting the requirements for one module called personal banking. And once the requirements are, once after it is done, okay, so what happens, you see in the diagram itself, in the waterfall model diagram, what we are seeing earlier. First they'll collect the requirements, right? Agile model also the same thing they will do. In the agile model also the same thing they will do. So first they will collect the requirements only for one module. Here in waterfall model, they used to collect requirements for all the modules at a time. But in the agile model, they are not collecting requirements for all the modules. They'll collect the requirements only for one module first. For example, personal banking. They'll start collecting requirements for personal banking. And once after collecting the requirements for personal banking, so the requirements will be given to the design team. They will give their requirements to the design team. So what happens? Consider collecting requirements for personal banking takes some 1 month. So immediately after 1 month, the design team will start working on deciding the technology components, like what is the front end they should use. Okay, they will start working on designing. Immediately they will start working on coding part. The next team will work on coding part. So the time gap, there will be no much time gap between one phase and another phase. So once the requirements team handed over the requirements to the design team, the requirements team will not sit ideally. The requirements team will take the another module. Okay, the requirements team will take another module called NRA banking, and they will start working on collecting the requirements for NRA banking. So like that, if you see, all the teams will be simultaneously working, and time is not getting wasted here, and even we are not wasting the resources. So in that way, agile model is suitable for larger complex projects. Agile model is suitable for some complex project, where waterfall model is not at all suitable for complex projects. So now you understood, right? What is the difference between waterfall model and agile model? In waterfall model, we have some drawbacks like requirements. After requirements collection, we cannot go for modifying the requirements. Okay, once after collecting the requirements, we cannot go for modifying the requirements. And waterfall model is not at all suitable for complex projects. And lots of time and resources are being wasted in the waterfall model. So we are overcoming, we came to agile model to overcome the drawbacks present in the waterfall model. So whatever the drawbacks that are present in the waterfall model, so we are trying to overcome them in the agile model. That's why we are using agile model today. So now if you really understand the agile model and the waterfall model, then again, what I'm trying to say is a very small example. If we are going to complete a project by using waterfall model in 2 years, the same project can be done within 1 year by using agile model. And now we will come to the DevOps part. Why we are learning DevOps? So if we implement the DevOps, if we implement DevOps tools along with the agile methodology, if we also have some DevOps tools, then definitely we can complete the same product within 6 months also. I'm just telling you an example. So where the product is taking some 2 years of time by using waterfall model, and we came to agile methodology, now the product is taking only 1 year. Okay, we can complete it in 1 year. So if we use the same agile methodology along with some DevOps tools, okay, if we include some DevOps tools along with the agile methodology, we can do it in 6 months itself. What is the reason? Okay, what is the reason? So I just wanted to tell you that. So there are many DevOps tools. We will discuss about the DevOps tools and all separately. So what I'm trying to say is, if we are going to include the DevOps tools along with the agile model, we can complete the product within 6 months. You can see here where is 1 year. Agile model was taking, okay, if by implementing agile methodology, it was taking some 1 year. And now today, if we are implementing DevOps tools along with the agile methodology, then it is taking only 6 months of time. That is the reason why we need to learn DevOps tools. Okay, the main purpose of DevOps is like we can complete the projects, we can complete the product within a short span of time, along with quality also. We can complete the product within a short span of time along with the quality also. So what are the tools that we are going to? What are the tools that we are going to use? Okay, what are the tools that we are going to use here? So for that, let me show you. We are going to use some tools like, I'm just showing you. What are the DevOps tools? Okay, I'm just telling you like what are the DevOps tools that we are going to learn, and in what way we are trying to reduce the time. Okay, so how the time is, how much time is taking in agile methodology, and how we are reducing the time and all, we'll try to understand by discussing each and every DevOps tool. So what are the DevOps tools that we are going to? We will start with basic Linux commands. Okay, we will start with basic Linux commands. So you all know Linux commands are very much necessary to learn all the DevOps tools. Why? Because if we don't know the Linux commands, it will be very difficult to work in the Linux environments. Why? Because almost all the DevOps tools were installed in the Linux environments. All the DevOps tools were installed in the Linux environments, and we should know the Linux commands at least to interact with the Linux servers. So we'll start with the basic Linux commands. Once we know the basic Linux commands, we are going to learn a tool called Git. So what is this GitHub or Git, whatever it is? So I'm talking about GitHub. Okay. So we will understand the GitHub tool. So people who are not aware of this GitHub tool, they can have some idea. So that's the reason why we are going through this GitHub tool. GitHub is a source code management tool. You know about, right? It is called as an SCM tool. GitHub is an SCM tool. SCM stands for source code management. Okay. What is the first thing that we are focusing on? We will be trying to focus on learning Linux commands. Once we learn the Linux commands, okay, and along with the Linux commands, we will also try to learn some shell scripting. We will learn shell scripting also along with the Linux commands. Okay, once we know the Linux commands, immediately we will also try to understand what is shell scripting, and we will learn shell scripting. So this is the basic requirement. We will learn Linux commands and shell scripting. So why? Because some scripting is necessary. Okay, some scripting language is necessary to work on the DevOps tools and all. So to automate the tasks and all, we need to have some scripting language. So after that, we will understand what is a GitHub tool. GitHub stands for what? GitHub is an SCM tool. SCM stands for what? Source code management. Okay, what is the source code management? By the name itself, you can understand. Source code management, meaning developers will write the code, right? So once the developers will write the code, they need to maintain the code. We should maintain the code in a repository. So source code is the precious asset, right? Very important asset for the product. If we are working on some project, source code is the very important asset for us. So it is very important for us to protect the source code. So developers will be working on the source code, and all the developers will commit the source code at one place, which is called as a source code management tool. So if some 10 developers are working, all the 10 developers will work on the source code. They will commit the code. They'll commit the code into a single repository called GitHub. See, GitHub is not only the source code management tool that is available today. You might be aware of, like, there are many source code management tools. We have tools like Bitbucket. GitHub is one. GitHub is one source code management tool. So along with GitHub, we have Bitbucket. Bitbucket is also one of the source code management tools. Like that, there are many other tools also we will discuss. Okay, whenever we start about GitHub, when we start with GitHub, we will understand what are the other tools that also we have. But these are the popular tools that are available in the industry today. GitHub and Bitbucket. Most of the people. Any doubts? Yeah, please go on mute. So these are the two popular tools that are being used in the industry today for source code management. And after that, we will also the next tool that we will understand is Maven tool. So why we will understand Maven is, so Maven is a build tool for Java projects. It is a build tool for Java projects. At least we should understand, right, how actually the build process will take place, how we will set up the automation, all those things. So we will understand Maven, which is a build tool for Java project, Java source code. Okay. So there will be different build tools for each and every technology. Like it is, Maven is not a common tool which is used for all the projects. Suppose if we are working with Java source code, if I want to compile the Java source code, I will use Maven. Like that, there will be other tools. Like for Java itself, there are multiple build tools, but we'll mainly focus on Java. We'll mainly focus on Maven. Okay, I'm just trying to say here, Maven is a build tool for Java source code. We can compile the Java source code. Okay, and we are going to build the Java source code. We are going to compile or build the Java source code. Finally, we will get the output file as an artifact with the help of Maven. It is a build tool. What we will get is, usually source code is, we are going to make the source code, right? The source code is available in GitHub. I'll show you, okay, how we will maintain the source code in GitHub. After that, we will be learning about Maven, which is a build tool for Java source code. So then what happens is, like, we will also discuss about Jenkins. Jenkins is a CI/CD tool. Jenkins is a CI/CD tool. CI/CD stands for continuous integration and continuous delivery. So Jenkins is an automation tool. Jenkins is one of the DevOps tools, and it is an automation tool that is driving the entire DevOps industry today. Okay, with the help of Jenkins, we can automate our tasks. With the help of Jenkins, we can automate the tasks. So we can call Jenkins as a CI/CD tool. So if you want to understand, like, what are all the tools that we are going to learn, definitely you should understand some flow. Okay, so I just wanted to tell you that particular kind of flow now, so that you will understand what is the necessity of learning all these tools. I am just opening. So with this flow, you will definitely understand, like, why we need to learn these many tools and all. You can see here, first of all, what I'm trying to say is, usually consider we have a repository called GitHub. Okay, try to understand, we have a repository called GitHub or Bitbucket, whatever it is. Okay, I'm just trying to make it as a GitHub. Consider we are using a tool called GitHub. What is GitHub? GitHub is a source code repository. What is the purpose of this GitHub? What is available here? What will be available here in the GitHub? Source code. Main thing that is available here in the source code, in the GitHub, is source code. Source code will be available in the GitHub. So all the developers will commit the source code to a GitHub repository. Now, once the source code is available here, consider we are having Java source code, that too. Okay, usually we might be having, based on the technology, developers will write the source code, right? consider they're writing the Java source code, and the Java source code is available in GitHub repository. So the next thing is like, as a DevOps resource, what are the tasks that we need to do is, once the source code is available in the GitHub, definitely the next step is like, we need to use some build tool for this one. Okay, as a DevOps engineer responsibility, the tasks that we should do, we should know, or we should do is, we should know what is the build tool that is used for Java. Suppose if we are having a .NET code, we should know what is the build tool that we should use for .NET. And if it is a Python, we should know what is the build tool that we should use for Python. So if you don't know what is a build tool and all, we will have a separate discussion on it. So I am talking about Maven particularly. So Maven is a build tool for Java projects. Okay, Maven is a build tool which we can use for Java source. So what we are doing with this Maven, in GitHub the source code is available, and with the help of Maven we are going to build the source code. Okay, what happens? What is the output that we will get by building the source code? What is the output that we will get by building the source code? After building the source code, after building the Java source code, with the help of a Maven tool, we will be getting some output file as artifact. Okay, we'll get the output file as artifact. So what is this artifact? So this is a file. This is the output file we get after building the source code. Okay, so building is nothing but like, we are compiling the source code and we are generating only the necessary files to run an application. So this artifact contains only the necessary files to run an application. Okay, so if I want to run an application, I don't want the entire source code. If I have this artifact, then I can run an application. Meaning, you can understand now, this artifact doesn't contain the entire source code. Okay, whenever we are building the source code using some build tool, so it will build the source code and it will generate some output file, which is called as what? Artifact. And this artifact contains only the necessary files to run an application. So once this artifact is generated, we are going to deploy this artifact. Okay, we are going to deploy this artifact into the earlier approach is like, earlier we used to deploy this artifact into some servers, like some web servers like Tomcat. You know Tomcat, right? So if I deploy the application, if I deploy the artifact, if I push the artifact into Tomcat server, and we can see whether the application is up and running or not, if the artifact is deployed into the Tomcat server. But now today, the things are changed, right? We are not using any servers to deploy these artifacts. So we are using a tool called, let me show you, we are using a tool called Kubernetes. You know what is the tool that we are using today? We are using a tool called Kubernetes. So what is this Kubernetes? We will have a separate discussion. So we are going to deploy everything into a tool called, we are deploying any application. So earlier we used to deploy Java applications in some server like Tomcat or JBoss, and we used to deploy some applications like .NET applications in different servers, Python applications in different servers. But today, you have any application, you can have any application, you might be working on any application. Okay, we can deploy our application in the Kubernetes. We can deploy our application in the Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is a tool. We can call it as a container orchestration tool. We will see the meaning later, what is container orchestration and all. But for now, just I am giving you for our understanding purpose, Kubernetes is a tool which is used for deploying our applications. So once an artifact is generated, this artifact can be deployed to Kubernetes, and we can see whether our application is running fine or not. Okay, so once an artifact is generated, you see here, what are the other tools that we require? Once an artifact is generated, this artifact, we cannot directly deploy this artifact into the Kubernetes. That is one problem we have. We cannot directly deploy this artifact into the Kubernetes. What we need to do is, we need to convert this artifact. Okay, we need to convert this artifact into Docker image. Trying to understand what I am doing here. we cannot directly deploy the artifact into Kubernetes. So what we are doing is we need to convert that artifact into Docker image, and that Docker image will be deployed into the Kubernetes. Why actually we are doing all these things? Because Kubernetes will not accept any other kind of things except Docker images. If I want to run any application in Kubernetes, Kubernetes can accept only Docker images. If we have a Docker image, I can deploy the Docker image into the Kubernetes. Then only we can see whether our application is running or not. We cannot deploy the artifact directly into the Kubernetes. That is what I'm trying to say. So that is the reason why we need to understand a tool called Docker also. Why we are learning a tool called Docker? So once an artifact is generated, how can we convert the artifact into Docker image? For that purpose, we need to learn a tool called Docker. Why we are converting that into image? So without Docker image, we cannot run that application. We cannot deploy that application into where? Kubernetes. So to deploy an application to the Kubernetes, we must convert the artifact into Docker image. Then the Docker image will be pushed to the Kubernetes so that we can see our application is running or not. Okay, so try to understand what is the actual flow that is happening here. The source code is available in GitHub, and with the help of some build tool, we are using a Maven as a build tool. So with this build tool, we are going to build the source code. With the help of this build tool, we will be building the source code. And once after building the source code, we will be generating a file called, what is the output file that is generated? Artifact. Once an artifact is generated, we will be converting this artifact into Docker image. So for this to happen, to convert the artifact into Docker image, we should have an idea about a Docker. What is a Docker? Docker is a containerization tool actually. So Docker is a containerization tool. We should understand what is a Docker, what are the basic Docker commands. So what is the purpose of Docker, why we are using Docker. We should understand, okay, to convert this artifact into Docker image. Once this is converted, we can deploy this Docker image into Kubernetes. So meanwhile, we are also using another tool called Jenkins. Okay. So why we are using Jenkins? Jenkins we are using as a CI/CD tool. So without Jenkins, we cannot automate all these tasks. So to automate all the tasks, we are using a tool called Jenkins. What do you mean by automation? Okay, spelling of Jenkins. Okay, only one N. Okay, it is wrongly typed. So Jenkins is a CI/CD tool. What is the purpose of Jenkins? We are going to automate each and every task. Automation in the sense, suppose source code is available in GitHub. Okay. So what Jenkins will do is, once the source code is available in GitHub, it will, once the source code is available in Jenkins, once the source code is available in GitHub, Jenkins will download the source code. Jenkins will pull the source code. Okay, Jenkins will try to pull the source code, and it will try to apply the Maven tool for building the source code. It will generate the artifact, and it will convert the artifact into Docker image, and it will push the Docker image into the Kubernetes. You got it? So who is performing all the tasks here? Once we set up all these things in the Jenkins will do everything. Jenkins will do the repeated tasks. So we first only the initial setup is required. Once the initial setup is done, Jenkins will perform all the tasks. Jenkins will automate all the tasks. Jenkins can download the source code. Okay, it will apply the Maven tool. It will generate the artifact. It will convert the artifact into Docker image. It will push the Docker image into the Kubernetes. Once the Docker image is deployed into Kubernetes, we can see the application is up and running in the Kubernetes. Okay. Okay. I'm having some other meeting. Please let me know if you have any questions. We will continue our discussion tomorrow. Okay. I'm stopping here for today. If you have any questions, please let me know. Then we will discuss. And we will continue the same discussion tomorrow. I'll give you a more brief introduction tomorrow, like how actually the things are playing and what are the tools that we are going to learn. And then we will start learning each and every individual tool. We'll start with Linux commands. And in the AWS also, I'll tell you, like in the AWS also, what are all the services that we are going to learn. And there are other DevOps tools also. These are not only the DevOps tools we are going to learn. There are other tools that are required, and where it is required, what is the necessity of learning those tools also we will be discussing in the next session. Any discussions, any doubts you have in today's session, please let.
So like, can we write a notes on this? Like, is there any particular explanation on the topics like GitHub or like
Yeah, I'll
Jenkins?
providing you the notes for each and every.
Okay, that's it's like at least like we need a definition for everything, right?
Not definitions. You'll get a clear notes for each and every. That's not it.
Okay, so from tomorrow onwards, like you're gonna explain.
From tomorrow onwards, like I will be starting with some Linux commands. Okay.
Okay.
And then we will start learning each and every individual.
So yeah, that's fine. Like we'll move tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Others, if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay, then if you don't have any questions, we'll meet tomorrow and we can discuss. Okay, please go through that demo. We will share the recorded session. Okay. If anyone missed it, like if anyone not understood, like you can go through the video once again, and you can come back with your doubts tomorrow. Thanks everyone. Let's meet tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.